Hi, I'm Andy Acton from Frank Taylor & Associates, and today I'm going to talk you through valuing a dental practice in 9 steps. So let's look at our aims and objectives for today and what we're going to work through. The first one is establishing why you need a valuation. There's a number of reasons you might need a valuation. You might be looking to sell your practice, you may be looking to raise finance, you may be looking to bring a partner into your business. It may be for a whole host of reasons, but understanding why you need a valuation to start with is really important. The second point is making sure you have the authority for the valuation to be taking place. If you're the sole principal of a practice, there's no issues at all. You own the information, it's up to you. If you have a partner, it's really important you have their permission to use the information for evaluation to take place. Next, we're going to look at the gathering of the essential information. There's a whole host of information you need to pull together so that evaluation can take place. So we're going to look at what information needs to be gathered. And then lastly, how to analyse the information, because it needs to be analysed in a way so you can come up with a robust and reliable valuation of your practice. So step one's that permission. Like I say, if you're the sole principal, it's your information, it's for you to do with as you wish. But if you do have a partner in your business, it's vital you get that permission right at the outset, because later down the line, if somebody feels that they've had their practice valued without their permission, that's not going to start things well. And whilst quite often people say, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission, in this case, that's not the case. It's really important you get that permission right from the beginning so that you're moving forward with integrity. The second thing you need to do is set time aside. It's going to take a while to pull the information together and make sure that you've got all that's needed to understand the value of your practice and get that valuation. You probably want to do it in private time as well. You're not going to want to do it when other people are around. So it might be a job to do over the evenings and weekends, but dedicating time to this task is really important, because I appreciate that during the day you're probably busy, so it's going to be an additional task in your week. And that planning is really, really important. There's no point in rushing. So step three is about the numbers. It's the financial data. The financial data effectively represents the output of what your practice has achieved, but it's really important to have that information available so that you can see what the performance is. So the first thing you're going to need to have available is your accounts for the last 3 years. The most recent set of accounts should be no more than 9 months old, because you have 9 months to file your accounts with HMRC. So that should be the oldest that they are in terms of being available. And the reason that 3 years is really important is across a 3-year period, you can start to spot trends. Are the gross fees increasing? Is profitability increasing? Has there been a real spike? And if the numbers jumped up, and if they have, is there an underlying reason as to why that's happened? But also you can look at core costs and make sure that the core costs in the business are where they should be. So things like materials, laboratory costs, staff costs, and the profitability and the property costs. Are they all where you'd expect them to be for a practice of that sort? So 3 years accounts is really important. The issue with accounts is that they're by nature out of date. So it's also important to have details of the most current position. And you can do that by having 3 types of information. The first part is details of your current NHS contract, assuming that you have one. So this will be the value of your NHS contract, how many UDAs you need to deliver, because then you can work out the amount that you get per UDA, and to make sure that you're on target, your performance against target is looking good. If it's not, there's a risk of a clawback, so it's important to make sure you stay on top of delivering those UDAs. The second element would be any plan-based income, and what we're looking for here is the most recent 12 months, because again, the accounts are going to be old and it's important to see what the income in the practice looks like now. So 12 months income will be really useful, and this will be plan-based income. So this will be DEN plan, practice plan, DPLAT, or one of the other schemes that are out there, and you want to see the monthly income with the numbers of patients that you've got. And also, if you've got a number of different plans, make sure all the plans are in there so that we know the overall total that you've got. And then the last part, a bit like the plan-based income, is the independent private fees. And again, what we're looking for here is the most recent 12 months, because that's going to let you know exactly where you are as at now, but also broken down by clinician, because it's important to get an understanding in terms of who makes that gross in the practice up. If you have a very high performing associate, it's important that you know that, and that's identified within the figures. But also broken down by dentistry type. So if you have a specialist visiting endodontist, or you do a high degree of implants, it's important to get that broken down, because those income lines are likely to be treated slightly differently in terms of valuing the practice. So step 4 is the property data collection. And this is the building that the practice operates from, and it's relatively straightforward. It's going to be freehold or leasehold. So let's look at freehold first. If it's a freehold, at some point you are going to need to have access to the title deeds, but you're also going to want to know what the approximate value of the building is, because the building is going to have to be funded at some point if your practice is going to be sold, and that's probably going to be funded by way of a loan. So it's important to make sure that the property is affordable in the context of the profitability of the practice. So that's to make sure that the loan that will be needed to service the building can be paid for from the dental practice profit, as well as paying the person who owns the practice, the incoming principal, and all the other running costs within the building, within the practice. The other style will be a leasehold. This is where you don't own the building and you rent it from somebody. And within there, the critical thing is to understand, is the lease drawn under the Landlord and Tenant Act 1954? Most leases are, but the reason it's important is it provides an amount of protection. It's more likely that you will get your lease renewed if it's drawn under the Landlord and Tenant Act. Like I say, it's not guaranteed, but if it is, the likelihood is you're going to be able to stay there for a renewable term. That aside, it's important to understand how long the lease was originally, how much is remaining on the lease at the moment, what's the annual rent, i.e. what does it cost for the business to be there on a yearly basis, how often does the rent get reviewed, and when's the next review date? Because again, rent tends to increase at each review, and that might need to be factored into your figures if that review's coming up soon. So step 5, this is the team. This is about the team data. This is the beating heart of the practice. This is really what makes it tick, and it's the glue that sticks it all together. So there's 2 sides to this. There's the employed team members. So this would be the nurses, the receptionists. You may have a practice manager. So you need to know all the people within the team, their job title, how many hours they're working in the business on a weekly basis, how much are they paid on a monthly or an annual basis, and how long have they been within the business. The how long they've been within the business is really important, because that's a really good indicator as to what the culture is like within the practice. If they've been there for a long period of time, the chances are it's a nice place to work, people enjoy it, and the conditions are good. If the team are changing on a regular basis, there might be an underlying problem, and there might be some issues that need to be addressed. So as a general rule of thumb, long service means it's a good, stable practice, and it's a nice place to be. You've also now got the self-employed people in the practice. So these are going to be the clinicians. So you've got the associates and the therapists and the hygienists. You want to understand what each of them does in terms of, are they general dentists or are they specialists? And if they're therapists, what services do they deliver? Again, how many hours do they work per week in the practice? How are they paid? Is it a percentage of the fees they generate? Is it on a sessional basis? Is it per patient? So understanding that pay rate is really important. And again, like with the nurses and the receptionists, the length of service will be a good indicator as to what the practice is like and is it a good place to be. So step 6, this is about collecting the practice data. So this is more the fabric and the nuts and bolts of how the practice operates. So in here we're looking at things like what sort of dentistry is delivered. Are there any specialist services? How much do they make up as a percentage of the overall income to the practice? Is it a referral practice? Do you receive patients referred in from different sources? What are the opening hours of the practice? Is it a traditional 9 to 5 Monday to Friday? Or are there early sessions and late sessions and weekends? Has the available time been exploited to suit the local patient base? If you're near a train station, quite often people offer early and late sessions to accommodate commuters. Have they been factored into the opening hours in the practice at the moment? Also, what marketing techniques are being used? Is there a website? Is there social media? Are there leaflet drops to local patients? Do you do open days? Do you do special things for children during school holidays? All the things that go on to raise the profile of the practice, to make sure that people know that you're out there and you're available to treat them. And also compliance certificates, x-rays and compressor and all the CQC standards. There's everything up to date, and you have that information available, because again, it's going to be important to show that it's a well-led and well-run practice, because you've got your compliance certificates to hand. And lastly, has the practice won any awards? If it has, that generally is a really positive thing from a patient point of view, but also for the team. You know, winning awards is a really something to be treasured, and quite often it leads to an awards night, which the whole team can enjoy. So if awards have been won, it's worth mentioning those and being aware of them, because again, it just lifts the profile of the practice. Step 7 is looking at your local competitors. Your competitor analysis will depend on where you're located. If you're in a city centre, you may be looking at going more than a few hundred yards around your practice. If you're in a rural location, you may be looking over a 5, 7, 10 mile area. But it's important to understand how many other practices there are that directly compete with you. So if you're a pure private practice and there's an NHS practice down the road, I wouldn't necessarily see that as a competitor. You know, yes, you're both offering dentistry, but in completely different markets. So it's important to really understand the people who are offering similar services to you, because with that, it gives you an idea as to what the opportunity in your area is. If you're in a very competitive area, it needs to be factored into the valuation. So step 8, this is about comparable data. So you now got all the essential information together, but what you now need to do is assess it and analyse it in some way. This is where you're more than likely to need the help of somebody who's undertaken practice valuations, ideally over a number of years, but critically, their data needs to be up to date and current and relevant for a practice of your type. Data needs to ideally be for valuations that have taken place in the last 6 months. Anything older than that, and there's a risk that it's going to be out of date. And ideally, you want somebody who's got a lot of information available so that they can benchmark your practices against others that are very similar, because that's how you're going to get an accurate, robust and up-to-date valuation. So number 9 is you've now got your valuation, so you've got choices. You've now got some choices to make and some options available to you, because before going through the process, you didn't know what your practice was worth, but hopefully now you've an understanding as to what it's worth, and then you can make some decisions. If you are deciding to sell, you can start looking at what the net proceeds from that sale are going to be and what you're going to do with those. If you're going to be looking to bring another partner into your business, you know how that might break down and what that investment look like. If you're going to be going to a bank and looking to secure some finance, you can present to them the current value of your business, and that's going to help them make a decision. A valuation basically gives you options. It's really important you know your worth. This is a really, really important and valuable asset, and not knowing what it's worth makes no sense. Very often people know what their house is worth or their car is worth or other investments, but without knowing what your dental practice is worth, that's one significant asset within your portfolio that you don't know the value of. Thank you for listening.